Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about a topic that sort of endlessly does the rounds, I guess, and it's to do with racial segregation, which has made a comeback, to protect those sensitive non-white people from those evil fascist Nazi Hitler white folks. Every white person is Hitler, by the way. And so racial segregation is the way to do that. I've noticed there's, and I think the rest of us have too, there's things like at the colleges, there's black-only graduation ceremonies and black-only study rooms and black-only dormitories and so on. And in a recent case that was publicised in I think it was Boston and Massachusetts in the United States, the Asian female mayor, of Boston, she arranged, using taxpayer money, a non-white, might have been black only, but I think it was not a non-white Christmas party. Only non-white, white people are not allowed to attend the Christmas party, breaking numerous laws in terms of racism and so on, but somehow there's never anybody around and no money to prosecute. If the reverse was the case, then armies of super well-funded NGOs would be out there suing the crap out of the government. But if it's against white people, who cares? Now this is become a big thing. Well, the commentary, it screams white people are racist. The most outrageous, over-the-top racist behaviour by non-whites passes under the radar without comment, and it's obviously a reflection of the insanity of our times. But I want to come back to something that I've mentioned a number of times and on a number of occasions, that what is sort of styled or depicted or described as racism is certainly in my view and by my vast experience in this area, behavioural clustering. We associate with people who behave the most like us. Now, whether that's cultural things or trained things or behavioural, or how you're brought up in your family or the social group or whatever, it doesn't really matter. You associate with people who must behave like you do, and there are a number of reasons. That in itself is sometimes sort of styled as racism, and that's nonsense. Just dismiss that out of hand whenever you hear it. But there are various social cues and minor, micro behavioural level things that you don't want to sort of trespass or transgress, because you don't look like an idiot. You don't want to offend other people. You don't want to constantly be in a situation where you're apologising for your social faux pas or whatever. So it's much easier and less stressful and more relaxing, if you will, or less relaxing to go in the other way, but more relaxing if you're around people who give off social cues that you understand and can relate to, and so you know how to behave in those sort of circumstances. Now, that isn't just simply a race thing. It's although it is, it's because different homogenous racial groups, they have different behaviours and different social cues and what's deemed as acceptable or not, and there are some fairly sort of lower level ones that you might not fully understand, and it's easier to transgress and offend other people. So you don't want to do that either. So getting together with groups that you understand, or they understand you understand them, that's a natural thing that all creatures and will do, and it's nothing to do with racism at all. Now, I've done a vast amount of international travel, and I'm always very, very mindful of, I'm the only white guy in the office, or the only white guy in the hotel, or the only white guy in the meeting, or whatever. So I'm very conscious that I'm the odd one out, and that I don't want to offend or make some careless passing remark in all innocence that can be viewed as being offensive or insufficiently respectful, if you will, of them. I know I expect the same in reverse, but again, I'm the odd one out doing the international traveling. So, but it's quite stressful to be in that, so particularly in business, given that you don't want to do something that'll fuck up the business deal. So you're mindful that you're being paid to be there and successfully negotiate a business deal. So you're conscious of that, and there are repercussions if I come away without securing the business deal. Then I've got to front the board of directors and be quizzed. Hey, Billy Bob, how come we spent how many thousands of tens of thousands of dollars getting you there and doing this and organising that, and you come back empty-handed. So I've got to account for what happened. So there's that. But aside from that, or parallel to that, if you will, there were some little mistakes I made. There's in one country where I was at, when I sort of put say a document or a laptop computer or something on my lap, and I often sort of cross my legs over, and I'm close to double jointed, so I can sort of cross my legs over to rest the computer on it. That's all. It's simply a practical matter. But in this particular area, if the soles of your feet are pointing at somebody, it's like a serious faux pas. That's tantamount to an act of gross rudeness. And I'd read something about don't point your feet at people, so I had a sort of rather the view as I pictured it, I remember at the time, was like a ballet dance would point their toes in someone's direction. So I was mindful of that. But because there were people sitting down the side of me, and I did that, they all got up and moved to the other side of the room. They didn't tell me you rude mofo and don't do that. No one said anything because they didn't want to embarrass me in their own concept of what politeness was. And so when they got up, and I thought, why have they all suddenly moved? And I thought maybe they want to sit in front of me to hear me talking or something. So but the penny dropped not long afterwards, and so they sort of crossed their legs, if you like, but it's pointed at a 45-degree angle down to the ground, not at a, if you like, 90 or 180 degrees or something like that. So anyway, those little things, that was one little mistake I made, and I was conscious of it, but then I didn't want to make an issue and apologize given that they hadn't pointed it out, and so on and so on. It was a relief to leave those places and go to another place where there wasn't so much stress and concern and worry about this behavioural thing. So I think we get together with people on a behavioural basis. Now, multiculturalism in the West has created these subcultures and ghettos and so on. So there isn't integration or assimilation. In fact, you've got multiple parallel societies in the West now, where people from other countries, third world dirt poor countries that are very tribal, rural villages and subsistence peasants, and they're able to transplant directly to the West and get access to the benefit of a first world country, flushing toilets and running water and light switches. They get access to all that, but still live in pretty much exactly the same ways they did in the rural villages in the third world shithole they came from. So they tend to hang around together in groups and associate hardly at all with anyone outside, and they only associate with white people on the basis of what will the white people give them, what benefits. If the white people are handing out cash and gifts, we'll interact with them, but if they're not, then we just want to hang around with our own people. Now, there was a lot of, and there's still a lot of talk where sociologists, quite falsely, by the way, allege that the school system and the workplace will socialise these people into becoming, that will be the process of integration rather than a direct process of integration, as in being forced or encouraged or required or obligated to integrate, or policies that would cause assimilation integration, such as compulsory good quality English before you can come to Australia, or not allowing people to live in ghettos, if you've got if there's if you come from, I don't know, Pakistan or somewhere, you can't live 200 meters anywhere within 200 meters from another Pakistani family, or those sorts of things. If not that exactly, some approximation of it. But this is this idea that this will, the school and so on will socialise people. Even that's proving to be utterly false. And I don't take public transport that often, so when I do, it's sort of a bit of an experience, if you like, where I can get a snapshot of society I don't otherwise get when I'm driving in the car. But just coming back from downtown Sydney on the train and going through some areas that have got, recently over the last 15 years or so, there's been a massive migrant intake to these areas, and some of them are now you can barely see a white face. And you can see when the schools come out, which is between 3 and 4 o'clock, I suppose. This is even the private schools where the kids come from quite well-off families, or relatively well-off. And you look at, there's the Chinese mainland kids there. There's the Hong Kong Chinese there. There's the Taiwanese Chinese. So they subdivide there. Then you've got the Indians, but the different Indians from different, because they've got a class system there in India, and the Brahmins here and the so-and-so's there, and so they divide. The Indians divide, but again, there's no white people other than Indians. The Indian group is only Indians. The Chinese group is only Chinese. The Filipino group is only Filipino, and so on. So there's and the Anglo-Saxon Caucasian group is only Anglo-Saxon. So the intermingling is very, very small. You get a very minor amount of more intermingling with the girls and with the boys, but there's very minor amount of intermingling where the Chinese group may take some sort of handicapped white boy as some sort of I don't know. It's like a pet, a little pet, like the medieval courts used to have dwarves in their court, that sort of thing. It's like some sort of treated as like an aberration. It's their little toy to play with. So there's one Chinese group there where they had this guy. He had red hair, very, very thick, glasses, and heavily freckled, and he looked like he was physically handicapped. He almost had no physical coordination and that sort of thing, and he was like their little pet, the Chinese group. So you get a little bit of that, but that's not real integration or assimilation. That's nothing of the sort. And then the Arabic groups, tend to hang together. The Lebanese there probably is a little bit more mixing there. You can pick some different accents. So there could be, say, that they're unified by their observance of Islam rather than the race, although there seems to be some subdivision in that as well. So there's no integration there at school. I'm talking about senior school. They all of these, not all, but most of them talk with Australian accents. But then, when they don't have to talk to white people, they then, or talk to someone outside of the group, then they talk in their own language, whether it be Chinese or whatever, Indian and so on. So the integration at that level is small. Now looking at the workplace, there's a wider distribution of people there. So, say you're going to work at a private company where you may be only one or two Indians, the other Indian may be of a different class than you. So in that sense, you're forced to interact. But as soon as you're out of the workplace, as soon as you're on the train traveling back home, you hang around only with other Indians. And when you get back to your place, you only interact with other Indians, unless, again, it's white people giving you gifts or handouts, or the government showering you with affirmative action, whatever. So the integration rate is minuscule, but there also are integration rates on other levels. Do you marry and procreate with somebody from another race or even another class for that matter? And when you look at, and I've mentioned this many times before, but look at the Indians who are 3, 4, 5, 6 generations Western born will still send back to the village of their ancestors for husbands and brides. Even marrying another Indian, boy or girl who was born in Australia or born in the West is considered somehow, it pollutes the cultural purity of the Indian family. So they want to get husbands or brides from India. The same with a lot of the Arabic thing. They'll send back to the village for husbands and brides and so on. So there's no assimilation at the level of, say, marriage and procreation. The Indians, particularly the upper class Indians, are absolutely fanatic about keeping themselves genetically, culturally, and pure, and to procreate or marry outside of that, the purity concept is considered tantamount to heresy. So the assimilation is actually quite low. Now, even in the case, where you've got, say, religious and racial, cultural differences, the assimilation rate is always going to be a little bit slower than where you don't have those differences. So say, white Christian Europeans from city, who have been brought up in an urban type environment, they're far more likely to integrate and assimilate within one generation than any of the others. Now, even Greeks, rural Greeks from the rural areas that were illiterate in their own language, and they came to Australia in the late 1940s and early 1950s. There was a lot of communist civil war type activity in Greece at the time, so quite a few people left, understandably, and people who had like smallish farms and the rural areas, but the communists, if they took control, were threatening to nationalise all those. So people thought, oh, holy shit, I'm getting out of here. So they came to Australia and other places too, the United States. And he's a third generation Greek guy. So he's the grandchildren of the ones that, well, actually it'd be second generation. I mean, the grandchildren of the people that came when they were in their late teens or early 20s from Greece, again, as illiterate rural farming peasants. And he's just married a Greek girl and wants to, because he wants to keep the Greek narrative sort of happening, social narrative happening, and but his children are probably going to intermarry and so on. But as long as they sort of live the sort of the Greek life, the Greek food, speak Greek at home, these sort of things, that slows down the integration process. When you look at, say, I'll just get some German immigrants that came to Australia some years ago. They were all sort of in their late 20s when they could speak English, but they were in their late 20s when they came to Australia, and they've had a couple of kids, or 3 children actually, and so they still talk German amongst themselves because they still find it easier. They still find English a little bit cumbersome to deal with compared to speaking German. But their children who speak German, but they're all like it's 3 boys, and they're all none of them are dating German girls, or none of them are dating people that speak German, or this sort of thing. So they'll fully integrate, and you can't tell them for anyone else. They look like any other white person, behave like and they've got a wide mix of friends. In their group of friends, there's maybe 1 or 2 migrant type people, but the rest of them are all local, locally born folks. None of them are German, and that sort of thing. So their integration rate is almost immediate, 1 generation. So in order to have an assimilated, integrated society where behaviours are common, you do need a policy of integration and assimilation. Otherwise, you have multiple different strands and types of behaviour, none of which have anything in common with any others. I have nothing in common with an Indian rural peasant, nothing. Whilst we may interact over a particular thing, there's an Indian family who are very, very Indian, and they were going they were going overseas, and because Indians have a thing about dogs, that they see dogs as evil carriers of disease. This Indian family kept this dog as a guard dog, really, and not a member of the family. But we they asked, they couldn't find any Indians. That was their first preference, who would look after the dog for them, and they didn't want to put it in a kennel or something. So they asked us, would we look after the dog? And we said, well, sure, and we often have done that, by the way, for other people too. So we did that, but we've got nothing in common. It's quite obvious as we were talking, we've got nothing in common with these people, far from it. We couldn't be further apart in so many ways. The only point of commonality we had is we both like dogs. But other than that, there was nothing. So until that changes, what we've got is a number of mischief makers, in the World Economic Forum or the globalist controlled media that try and gin all this up as saying, well, it's all racism and it's only racist, bad white people that are the problem. This is absolute bullshit. It's behavioural differences, and people will always associate with those they have the most in common with in terms of behaviour. So it's nothing to fucking do with racism. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.